Hi, I'm Brian Levin. We're with Medea Hussein, who's with Muslim Advocates, a wonderful group that does work with regard to intimidation and harassment against our Muslim American friends and neighbors. And your group is based out of Oakland, California, but you do work nationally.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Tell us a little bit about Muslim Advocates, and then we'll ask you some questions about the state of anti-Islamic harassment and intimidation in the United States. But first, tell us about Muslim Advocates. When did it start? Where are its affiliates? And what do you do?
Yeah, so Muslim Advocates is a national legal advocacy and education organization. We are based in Oakland, but we do work all over the country. And our goal is to promote religious freedom for people of all faith backgrounds, and particularly to protect the rights of Muslims in this country here in America.
So, what are some of the issues that you concentrate on? Obviously, there's examples of crimes, but there's also other types of discrimination that you work on as well. Can you tell us a little bit about the instances that you see where crimes take place, and you track crimes as well, hate crimes, for instance, against Muslim Americans? But what are some of the non-criminal acts of discrimination that you also seek to eradicate and combat?
Yeah, so unfortunately, as we both know very well, we're in a time where anti-Muslim hate crimes and threats and violence and vandalism are just the norm. And we've been tracking incidents of specifically hate crimes against Muslims since about 2015, very actively tracking, and that involves not just victims that are Muslim, but those that are also perceived to be Muslim, because there sometimes tends to be some confusion and people will target individuals simply because of how they look or how they pray or the languages that they're speaking. But as we know, there are not just only instances of violence. There's also speech that's harmful that doesn't necessarily amount to an act of violence that can be held accountable under the law. We also see opposition to mosques and institutions that are Muslim, serving the Muslim population, so Islamic schools and charities that are getting opposition in their communities from being built.
So in addition to these horrible acts of arson against Muslim mosques and community centers, there's actually work that you're doing with regard to like zoning issues where people are trying to prevent a mosque or a Muslim community center from going up as well, huh?
Absolutely. So because we have a team of lawyers, including myself, we are able to bring challenges and representing those communities and assist them in trying to get their institutions to be built so that they can practice their faith without harm or fear of knowing where they're going to go and perform their prayers and their rituals, and even to convene as a community. To not have that space is really challenging. So we bring lawsuits, we challenge those policies that are discriminatory, and we also provide assistance to individuals that are seeking to hold their local officials accountable, so in context of bullying and all sorts of things that relate to discrimination.
Can you give us some examples of anti-Muslim hate crimes, acts of harassment, and instances where mosques have been targeted for either criminal events or some kind of prevention with regard to their construction?
Yeah, so the most classic example of this is in a small town called Murfreesboro, Tennessee, which a few years ago, about 5 to 6 years ago, they were trying to build a mosque, and there were instances where the property site was actually something, a tractor or something was set on fire. And this was a series of events where the sign was vandalized without even having an actual building. The sign that was noting and identifying that this was going to be the future location of the mosque was vandalized and things written on it. And that's thankfully, after many years of a long legal battle, that mosque is now up and running, and it's a beautiful mosque. But these types of opposition campaigns are really replicating themselves around the country today, even today, after many years.
And that's a state like some others that we've seen this anti-Sharia law efforts take place. Can you talk a little bit about that and why this is happening when the Constitution prevents Sharia law or halakhic law or papal law from being instituted in the United States in the first place.
Yeah, so as we know, the United States Constitution prohibits any type of law that is in contrary to the values that we have as a country. And so what that means is that you can't hold any other law above the United States Constitution, which is supposed to be the law that governs our land. What we have seen is that there are particular efforts underway for many years, at least for the last 5 to 6 years, where they've proposed anti-Sharia bills, or what we now call foreign law bans, because they recognize that that was blatantly against the law to pass laws that were specifically targeting a particular faith community. So instead, they started to challenge foreign laws and say that this is unacceptable. But what they're trying to do with these bills is they're really trying to hone in on the fact that Muslims should be treated differently. And that's the ultimate purpose. Whether those laws are ultimately passed or not is really not the heart of the issue. The heart of the issue is that they're trying to treat others differently simply because of their faith. And we know that that, being part of the constitutional values that we hold here, is also against the law. And this is taking form now in anti-refugee bills, where people are trying to pass laws that are targeting refugees and to cut funding for refugees. And these laws are being proposed in places where we know that Muslim refugees are the greatest refugee population in those states and those cities. And so this is really problematic because they're finding new ways to challenge the rights of Muslims in this country.
If we had to look at your work as a whole with Muslim Advocates is such a wonderful organization. For those of us who are in the anti-hate world, you garner a lot of high regard and respect.
So much.
What is the, if you can, not official, but the proportion, the breakdown of the complaints that you get? In other words, proportion, what percentage are hate crimes or dealing with refugees, or some other kind of harassment at schools, if with regard to the calls that come in on a daily or weekly basis?
Yeah, I wish I had the answer to that question. It's a really tough question to answer because we're seeing a lot. Right now there's an influx of reports of bullying, discrimination at the workplace, harassment at the border, or being mistreated at the border, being detained and questioned. Hate crimes, of course, vandalism of mosques and mosque opposition. And what we're seeing right now, and really what our takeaway is, that the American Muslim community is being targeted on many fronts, and we are working along with our allies in the other communities, in the Jewish community and in other faith communities, and in those that are doing great work like yourself to track these things. We're really working to find ways to push back against this. And even a small positive outcome makes a difference right now when the community is feeling so overwhelmed.
Is there any sense that any particular type of set of incidents are predominating more than others, or any region of the country that you're experiencing greater difficulties?
I think that because of the new administration's approach to some of these situations and kind of the normalization that we're seeing, they're really, in my opinion, you probably know better, but we haven't seen that there is only one type of incidents that's happening more frequently than the other. It's that essentially they're trying to find any way to target the Muslim community and the Jewish community and other communities, whether that's murder, wholesale murder of individuals, or if it's simply just making people feel uncomfortable and unwelcome. And all of these things combined create an atmosphere where people are very afraid. And we are just doing what we can to ensure that people know what their rights are and that they know what they can do and who to call when they need assistance and support.
Now, your group has been quite vigorous with speaking out against racial prejudice, for instance, against African Americans, as well as anti-Semitism. Why is that important for a group that is a Muslim American civil rights group to join in that discussion as well?
That's a really great question, and it's because an attack on any individual is an attack on all of us. An attack on one community is an attack on all of our communities, whether it's a Jewish institution that's being targeted or a mosque that's being targeted. We all need to speak out against this type of treatment and this type of, again, normalization of this behavior, because if we aren't able to stand up for one another, then it's only going to become more prominent and prevalent in our community. And so we very much believe that all of these challenges and all of these, being vocal against racial prejudice or attacks on the Jewish community is critical to ensuring that we are all safe and secure in this country.
And can you tell us a little bit about the demographics of the Muslim American community? Almost a quarter are African American, but we have many from South Asia. You know, the stereotype of all Arabs being Muslim and all Muslims being Arab, obviously wrong. Can you tell us a little bit about the demography of the Muslim American community?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's a lot of people don't know that the African American Muslim population is actually very large, and some say it's even more than a quarter, and it's a plurality of the community. And we have a very diverse range of ethnic backgrounds and nationalities represented in the American Muslim community, including a significant number of people that are born and raised in America and actually came into the faith from a different heritage and from a different background. And so what that means is we have individuals that are Muslim that look like me. We have individuals that are Muslim that look like you. And
I hope they look better than me.
we have American Muslims and Muslims around the world that are probably, it's one of the most diverse faiths that we know of, a large faith. And that presents many challenges for people that are trying to make homes in these countries. But at the same time, it's also a beautiful thing to see that so many people from different backgrounds are practicing a faith and holding to the same belief system. But many people don't know that. And so they target the individuals that appear to be Muslim simply based on skin color or language. So someone that might be speaking Arabic might actually not be Muslim. And that, I think, has made it so that many individuals feel unsafe.
Well, Medea Hussein, thank you so much. You are staff attorney for Muslim Advocates. If people want to look at your website or contact you, how can they go about doing it?
You can find us on our website at www.muslimadvocates.org. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much. If there's anything our center can do for you as well, it's our pleasure. And I know you're very busy. Thank you so much for on a cloudy San Francisco day taking some time to talk to us and continue the great work that you do.
Thank you. Thank you all. Take care.
Thank you. Our pleasure. Thank you.